Happy Easter, everyone. Christ is risen. He is truly risen. Alleluia. As we heard in our gospel reading just now, St. Mary Magdalene arrived at his tomb that first Easter Sunday morning to find the stone rolled away and the tomb empty. For Christ was not there. He had been raised. But I wonder, what happened inside that tomb? Christ was raised from the dead. But what would a camera inside that tomb have recorded? What would scientific instruments inside that tomb have detected? For the scriptures don't tell us this. The Gospels recount how Jesus' dead body was wrapped in a linen cloth and placed inside the tomb, and a stone was rolled in front of it on Good Friday. And then, on Easter Sunday morning, the women found the stone rolled away, and angels, and the empty burial cloths, and no Jesus, until he appeared to them very much alive. But in between those 2 points, during that period while the stone was in front of the tomb, what happened? It is a question we should take seriously, given the urgency with which we heard St. Peter declare that he and the other apostles were witnesses to the risen Christ, and that they had been chosen and sent by God to bring this message of judgment and forgiveness to the world. It is a question that we should take seriously, given that we understand that the resurrection is not simply a matter of some fallen leader's message being carried on in the memories of his followers, or is it just Christ going spiritually to the Father? The scripture scholar N.T. Wright has explained to us that for the Jews and the Greeks of the first century, nothing short of real bodily rising could have counted as resurrection. And it is a question that we should take seriously as we think back 2 weeks, the account that we heard of Christ raising Lazarus from the dead. For that raising was completely different. When Christ raised Lazarus, someone else had to roll back the stone. Someone else had to take the burial cloths off of him. And Christ only raised him back to this earthly life. One day he would die again. Jesus' rising was different. His body was transformed. The risen Christ, as we read in the gospel accounts, could pass through locked doors, could move long distances clearly. He would never suffer or die again. So what did happen inside that tomb? Can we know? There was not a single human being inside that tomb to witness the moment of the resurrection. No human being. But there was something. There were the burial cloths that went into that tomb wrapped around Jesus' dead body and then were left behind when he departed. Those cloths were present, even directly in contact with him at the moment of his resurrection. If we had those cloths, would they contain some clues to what happened? Now you surely have heard of the Shroud of Turin, which is a long linen cloth that has been first in France and then in the city of Turin in northern Italy for the past 600 years. It is 3.5 feet wide and 14 feet long. Similar in size to this cloth, except about twice as long. Now the Shroud of Turin shows the image of a full body of a man, front and back, twice so long. And it is said that this shroud is the cloth that was in that tomb on Jesus' body. It is said that the image on it is the image of Christ, crucified, and buried. Now the church has not pronounced either for or against his shroud. Scholars debate back and forth, and I'm not taking a stand on it either. But I want to consider some possibilities that it raises because of what it makes possible, of what occurred in that moment of Christ's resurrection. So what do we find when we look at the Shroud of Turin? We find that the image on it is entirely superficial, on the surface. It does not penetrate the linen of the cloth, and there is no pigmentation such as would be found in paint. Rather, the image exists only within the coating on the surface of the cloth. So thin it is said that if you took a razor blade and scraped it lightly over it, you would take the image entirely away. So thin is that image. And what is the image? It is very like a photographic negative, but not a two-dimensional photographic negative, rather like a three-dimensional negative. And so scholars wonder whether they believe the shroud is real or fake. How was the image made? We, in the 21st century, with all our technology, can we come up with a technique to replicate the shroud, to make another just like it with its mysterious image? How would we do it? Because we have not been able to do it so far. Paint is out. They've tried putting cloth on a hot metal statue, other things like that. Nothing's worked, nothing's gotten it exactly so far. But as I was looking over some of the things that scholars have studied and proposed, and there's an awful lot of it out there if you're interested in looking, but a few ideas stand out to me. Some ideas that seem prominent right now. Could that image have been formed from some chemical substances coming out of the body, going through the linen, and causing a chemical reaction within that coating? Or could the image have been formed by a corona discharge, an electrical discharge, which in photos looks sort of like lightning coming out of something, or lightning glow around the object? Or, the possibility I find most interesting, could it be the result of some sort of radiation? X-rays, ultraviolet radiation, some other kind of radiation that is coming from some great energy source within the body. Because this leads us to the possibility that in the moment that Christ was raised from the dead, something like the force and energy of a controlled nuclear reaction was occurring within his body, that not only restored this dead body to life, but transformed it, changed it, moved it, we might say, to a whole new dimension, the resurrection. So that this radiation was being released into and through the cloth in a short but very intense moment. A moment in which the cloth was actually collapsing upon itself because the body, Christ's rising body, was dematerializing out of our normal earthly dimension, becoming the resurrection. So we have a possible picture. Is that what happened inside that tomb, at that moment, on that first Easter morning? Is that what was involved in overcoming the state of death?